Result of today's riots. We knew about a woman who died inside the U.S. Capitol, but police just announced a short time ago that an additional woman and 2 men have died after medical emergencies. Police also found 2 pipe bombs, one at the DNC and another at the RNC. So again, just to recap, not 1 death as we initially thought just a short time ago, but actually 4 deaths as a direct consequence of the actions today, the breaching of the Capitol building by anarchists. And we're you in listening to the roll call.
It appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 4 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 4 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote from the state of Idaho that the teller has verified appear to be regular in form and authentic?
Hearing none.
Hearing none. This certificate from Illinois, the parliamentarians advised me, is the only certificate of vote from that state that purports to be returned from the state, and that is annexed to it.
Dude, anarchists love Donald Trump and his militarized police state.
Electors.
First of all, none of them are anarchists.
The certificate of the electoral vote.
He's not a single one of them was trying to cancel me for a microaggression that I may or may not have said. Okay? They were fascist terrorists. They were not anarchists.
And Kamala D. Harris.
They were maybe as crusty as anarchists, but
received 20 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the vote of the state of Illinois that the teller has verified appears to be in regular form and authentic? Hearing none. This certificate from Indiana, the parliamentarians advised me, is the only certificate of vote from that state that purports to be returned from the state, and that has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of that state purporting to appoint and ascertain electors.
Oh, that's crazy that they're saying they're anarchists.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Indiana seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 11 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 11 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the vote of the state of Indiana that the teller has verified? Appears to be regular in form and authentic. Hearing none. This certificate from Iowa, the parliamentarians advise, is the only certificate of vote from the state that purports to be a return from the state, that has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Iowa seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 6 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of Iowa that the teller has verified? Appears to be regular and authentic. Hearing none. This certificate from Kansas, the parliamentarians advised me, is the only certificate of vote from that state that purports to be returned from the state, and that has annexed to it a certificate of authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Kansas seems to be regular in form and authentic. It appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 6 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of Kansas that the teller has verified appears to be regular in form and authentic? Hearing none. This certificate from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, the parliamentarians advise me, is the only certificate of vote from that state that purports to be a return from the state, has annexed to it a certificate of authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the Commonwealth of Kentucky seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 8 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 8 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the vote of the Commonwealth of Kentucky that the teller has verified appears to be regular in form and authentic? Hearing none. This certificate from Louisiana, the parliamentarians advise me, is the only certificate of vote from that state. It purports to be returned from the state, has annexed to it a certificate of authority from the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Louisiana seems to be regular in form and authentic, and appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 8 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 8 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the vote of the state of Louisiana, that the teller is verified to be regular in form and authentic? Hearing none, this certificate from Maine, the parliamentarians advise, is the only certificate of vote from that state that purports to be returned from the state, that has annexed to it a certificate of authority from the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Maine seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware received 3 votes for president, and Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 1 vote for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 3 votes for vice president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 1 vote for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of Maine, that the teller is verified, appears to be regular in form and authentic? Hearing none, this certificate from Maryland, the parliamentarians advise me, is the only certificate of vote from that state, purports to be returned from the state, has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of...
Bro, this shit is hella boring, dude. Literally, this is unironically one of the biggest problems, or my criticisms of like the direct democracy at every step, is that you would die. Like, we're just waiting for Pennsylvania for some spice right now, but like the rest of it is so fucking boring.
Appears to be regular in form and authentic. Hearing none, this certificate from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the parliamentarians advise, is the only certificate of vote from that state, purports to be a return from the state, and has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
President Trump telling people today that he was happy Loeffler and Purdue lost. According to a person familiar with the conversations, he said they didn't defend him enough. Hell yeah.
That Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware received 11 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 11 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? The tellers advised appear to be regular in form and authentic. Hearing none, this certificate from Michigan, the parliamentarians advise, is the only certificate of vote in that state that purports to be a return from the state, and has annexed to it a certificate of authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Michigan seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware received 16 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 16 votes for vice president.
For what reason does the gentlelady from Georgia rise?
Mr. President, I, along with 70 of my Republican colleagues, object to the counting of the electoral votes for the state of Michigan on the grounds that the error rate precedes the FEC rate allowed at 0.0008%, and that the people who signed affidavits at risk of perjury, their voices have not been heard in a court of law.
Section 15 and 17 of Title III of the U.S. Code require that any objection be presented in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator. Is the objection in writing and signed by a member and a senator?
The objection is writing, not signed by a senator.
Oh!
In that case, the objection...
I'm afraid you should shut the fuck up then! How about you exercise shutting the fuck up? You
Are there any further
stupid
objections to counting the
donkey!
certificate of the vote from the state of Michigan?
And again, another state, the state of Michigan, where we
Certificate the teller
did
has
see an
verified appears to be
objection that
regular
was
and form and
raised, but
authentic.
Vice President Pence
Hearing
quickly
no further
asking if
Object
it
to
had
my
been signed
dick.
by a senator, a
certificate
hearing
from
that it has
Minnesota.
not. He said then that
Parliamentarians
objection
advised me is the
cannot
only
be
certificate of vote from
entertained,
that state
and the
that
roll
purports to be
call
returned from the
continues.
state.
Moving on to another
Annexed
state.
to its certificate of authority from the state purporting to appoint and ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Minnesota seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware received 10 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 10 votes.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the vote of the state of Minnesota that the teller has verified appears to be regular in form and authentic?
You must be
Hearing
this
none.
tall.
This certificate from
You
Mississippi.
must be this tall to get on this ride, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Turns out you're 4 foot fucking zero ass can't get on the ride. Fuck you!
Don't forget
And ascertain electors.
Go find another senator so you can stand on top of their shoulders.
The state of Mississippi seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6
You are
votes
not
for
a short
president,
queen.
and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 6 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote from the state of Mississippi that the teller has verified appears to be regular in form and authentic? Hearing none. This certificate from Missouri, the parliamentarians advise
my
is the only
TTS on?
certificate of vote from the state that purports to be a return from the state,
Oh, fuck.
that has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Missouri seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 10 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 10 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the vote of the state of Missouri that the teller has verified appears to be regular and authentic? Hearing none. This certificate from Montana, the parliamentarians advise, is the only certificate of vote from that state.
Marjorie should embarrass herself further.
And that has
Yo,
annexed
keep
to it a
objecting,
certificate of
Marjorie.
authority of the state
You sick
purporting
fuck.
to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President,
This is actually more entertaining that way.
The state of Montana seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J.
Here's
Trump
an
of the state of
objection I
Florida
have.
received 3 votes for president.
Top of the hour,
and Michael
baby.
R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 3 votes for
Just like
vice
every hour
president.
yard, you know what
Any
time it
objections
is.
to counting the certificate of the vote of the state of Montana that the teller verified appears to be regular in form and authentic? Hearing
Teller's
none.
about to verify that the fucking top of the hour is here, which means it's time for a 6-second ad break. What does the teller say that you can do to no longer see the ads? Oh, the teller says you can subscribe with your fucking Twitch Primes for free or for $5. Here's the fair and authentic 1-minute ad, ladies and gentlemen.
And it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received
Yes,
4
I
votes for
silenced
president.
Montana voters because here's what I think about Montana. Nothing. I don't think about Montana ever. I don't even understand why it's a state. Okay, there, I said it. Same with Wyoming. Wyoming get cash these hands too.
And Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 1 vote for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote from the state of Nebraska that the teller's verified as regular in form and authentic? Hearing none. This certificate from Nevada, the parliamentarian advises, is the only certificate of vote from the state that purports to be a return from the state, and that has annexed to it a certificate of authority from the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Nevada seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware received 6 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris
Come on,
of the
let's make
state of
this spicy,
California
dude. Hit me with
received
some.
6
Hit me with
votes
something good.
for vice president.
For what reason does the gentleman from Alabama rise?
Mr. President, I and 55 other members of the United States House of Representatives object to the electoral votes of the state of Nevada in order to protect the lawful votes of Nevada and all other American citizens.
Section 15 and 17 of Title III of the United States Code requires that
in the
any
state of
objection be
Nevada,
presented in writing and signed by a member of the
and
House
we'll
of
hear if this is
Representatives
entertained at all, if there's a
Is the
signature
objection
by
in
the
writing
senator
and
or not.
signed by a member and a senator?
Mr. President, it is in writing, but unfortunately, no United States senator has joined in this effort.
This is actually the House, no signature.
I'm
again, and so
afraid
Vice President Pence
all 55 of you motherfuckers need to sit down then. Yikes, dude. Fuck, that sucks, dude. Shit, buddy. Try again next time, dude.
We're now going to hand it over to our friends at Nightline for continuing coverage of this unprecedented past 24 hours.
Get fucked.
This certificate from New Hampshire.
I can't believe this.
Inspired by a president unwilling to
Oh my God, they
concede.
just hit us with the top of the hour, every hour, 6-second ad break. Oh my God. We just literally got rolled by fucking CNBC or whatever we were watching.
Section 15 and 17 of Title III of the United States Code requires that any objection be presented in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator. Is the objection in writing and signed by a member and a senator? This certificate from New Hampshire, the parliamentarians advise me, is the only certificate of vote from that state that purports to be a return from the state, has annexed to it a certificate of authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of New Hampshire seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware received 4 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 4 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of New Hampshire? That the teller is verified appears to be regular in form and authentic. This certificate from New Jersey, the parliamentarians advise, is the only certificate of vote from the state that purports to be a return from the state. Has annexed to it a certificate of authority.
I'm fucking voting for the next president over here. Hey, does anybody object? Hey, is the last gobba you gold over
The
here.
electoral vote of the state of New Jersey
Sorry,
seems to be
I don't know what
regular
happened.
in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware received 14 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 14 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of New Jersey? Teller's verified appears to be regular in form and authentic.
Wow, not a single person. This is bullshit.
This certificate from New Mexico, the parliamentarians advise, is the only certificate of vote from the state. It purports to be a return from the state, and that has annexed to it a certificate of authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of New Mexico seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware received 5 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 5 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate?
Do you guys remember before George Floyd happened, Amy Klobuchar was the top slot for vice president? And then literally,
Hearing none,
the state in which she was a prosecutor, the city
the parliamentarians advise me
that she literally oversaw, ended up having an instance of police brutality that shocked the entire world. I remember.
And ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of New York seems to be regular in form and authentic.
Fun
And it
fact.
appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware received 29 votes for president.
How many staffers do you think she fucking killed with a stapler after that one?
29 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote?
Like, she buried the bodies, you know what I'm saying?
Verified appears to be regular in form and authentic. Hearing none, this certificate from North Carolina, the parliamentarians advise me, is the only certificate of vote from that state that purports to be a return from the state, has annexed to it a certificate from the state purporting to appoint and ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of North Carolina seems to be regular in form and authentic.
Remember when people said I was
And it appears
sexist for
therefrom
pointing
that
that
Donald
out?
J. Trump of the state of Florida received 15 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 15 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of North Carolina? That the teller is verified appears to be regular in form and authentic.
I've seen her campaign
This
ads.
certificate
She's a
from
very
North Dakota,
kind
the
woman.
parliamentarians
Absolutely
advised me is the
disgusting
only certificate of vote
sexism.
from the state that
Oh,
purports
okay, you've
to be a
been
return from
subscriber.
the state.
Okay, you've been subscribed for 3 months. You know that's fucking. That's how I know that's a meme, dude. First, I was like, listen, we got some liberals here. I don't know. That might be a legitimate fucking take. You know what I'm saying?
The state of Indiana received 3 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote for the state of North Dakota? That the teller is verified
anama
as
küfür et.
regular and authentic.
Ananı sikeyim. En büyük hayalim. Siktim ananı hadi. Oldu mu?
Hearing none, this
Manyak.
certificate from Ohio, the parliamentarians advise is the only certificate of vote from the state that purports to be a return from the state, has annexed to it a certificate of authority of the state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of
Hasanabi
the
en büyük
electoral vote of
hayranım,
the state
hayalim
of
anamı sikmen
Ohio
dedi.
seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 18 votes for president, and Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana received 18 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote from the state of Ohio that the teller has verified as regular in form and authentic? Hearing none, this certificate from Oklahoma,
It's so funny these fucking
parliamentarians advise
idiots,
the only certificate of vote from that
like these
state
hogs,
purports to be a return
including
from the
Donald
state,
Trump, or rather led by Donald Trump,
authority of the state
thought that this was the process that they were going to disrupt
Mr. President,
and like
the certificate
somehow
of the electoral
overturn the
vote of
results
state
of,
Oklahoma
as
seems
though
to be regular
this
in
part
form
of the
and authentic,
process is
and
the
it appears
real
therefrom
process that like
Donald J.
solidifies who
Trump of the
becomes
state of
president,
Florida
and
received
not the
7
fucking
votes for
election that
president,
already took
and
place
Michael R. Pence
and the
of state of
certifications that
Indiana
already happened. Like
received
they
7
can do
votes
this in the
for
dead of the night.
Are there any
It's
objections
boring
to
as fuck.
counting the
You've never
certificate
seen
of
it
vote of the
happen
state of
for good
Oklahoma?
reason,
The teller
because
is
it's completely, it's just boring. It's just process. It's just something that you do.
Hearing
But like
none,
in the minds of these
certificate
fucking
from
hogs, they were like,
Oregon,
we're gonna storm the Capitol building, brother. Like
to be returned from the state.
they thought that they could like stop this from happening or some shit, as though that would like overturn the
And
results.
ascertain electors.
They're so stupid. It's literally just a formality, dude.
Seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware received 7 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 7 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of Oregon that the teller has verified as regular in form and authentic? Hearing none,
Oh my God.
this certificate from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the
That'd be so
parliamentarians
sick.
advise, is the only certificate of vote from the state that purports to be a return of the state, has annexed to it a certificate from an authority in the state purporting to appoint and ascertain electors.
Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware received 20 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 20 votes for vice president.
For what reason does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Mr. President, sadly but resolutely, I object to the electoral votes of my beloved Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on the grounds of multiple constitutional infractions that they were not, under all of the known circumstances, regularly given. And on this occasion, I have a written objection signed by a senator and 80 members of the House of Representatives.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a senator?
Yes, Mr. President, it is.
An objection presented in writing and signed by both a representative and a senator complies with the law. Chapter 1, Title 3 of the United States Code The clerk will report the objection.
We, a United States Senator and members of the House of Representatives, object to the counting of the electoral votes of the state of Pennsylvania on the ground that they were not, under all of the known circumstances, regularly given. Signed, Josh Hawley, United States Senator, Scott Perry, Member of Congress.
Are there further objections to the certificates from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? The chair hears none. The two houses will withdraw from joint session. Each house will deliberate separately on the pending objection and report its decision back to the joint session. The Senate will now retire to its chamber.
Oh no! It's literally a procedural waste of time. Hog. Thanks, Cash App. For the free ad. Sponsored, baby. Just kidding. It's so for those of you who are wondering what the fuck happened, so this is what was gonna happen earlier today. And actually, if the fucking brainlet hogs didn't storm the halls of Congress, this actually would have been a like a longer, more complicated process. But once they did breach the halls, everyone was like, all right, we can't fucking even do the aesthetic things anymore. And like they had to withdraw. Like in Georgia, for example, I think it was Kelly Loeffler who literally withdrew her objection, right? I don't even know if she had the opportunity to be able to object because anyway, regardless, yeah, she withdrew because of the events that took place, and so did what's his face, the one that is like technically objecting, Josh Hawley, the one who's objecting to the Pennsylvania one, is I think he's not even going to do anything. Like he's not going to really like deliberate on it. So it's basically just a symbolic hurdle that they've placed in front of the final tally or the final authentication of every vote. So it's nothing but theater. It was nothing but theater earlier this morning as well. Guys, I just got to remind you of this. Yeah, I got to remind you of this thing, but like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you can't. I know it sometimes feels like it works that way, and American politics is so fucking weird and convoluted and boring and sometimes complicated that you think like, oh no, like, will the election results be overturned? Like, and I myself have said before that like I won't rest easy until Joseph Robinette Biden or his corpse, doesn't really matter, is sworn into office, and I don't give a fuck what happens to him. He could die after that for all I care. I literally don't give a shit. But at this stage, it's like, it's a wrap. Okay? I mean, it's literally a wrap. Like, there is no one senator objects, and then all of a sudden we're overturning like 85 million votes. You know what I mean? That would be fucking psychotic. That would be completely insane. There is no like, oops, time to do a do-over. Like, one senator objected. Like, that's not happening. Yes. Weekend at Biden's. Yes, exactly. They're going to attack. I hope they don't do this shit during the inauguration. We don't have the people to handle it, says the Capitol Police officer. We were just not prepared. They got their 4 levels of our security, Capitol officer to me just now. Yeah, get the fuck out of here, dude. You were just not prepared. Yeah, again, I mean, the Hannah Montana joke steals the day from that Woomixon. But, like, the reason why they didn't have enough people is because, you know, their ranks... I mean, there it is, actually. Look at that. Oh, there's more of them. All of it. Anyway, the reason why they didn't have enough people in their ranks was because they were too busy blowing through the barricades
cannot
themselves.
do that if we ever want to get to a better place. You know, you and I shared an interesting thought today that was very different than what was being done even by our brothers and sisters in the media. When this started to happen,
I love Cuomo, dude.
Came out and they busted and did that bums rush into the Capitol. Were you surprised?
No, not at all. I have to be very careful at what I say tonight because I'm not surprised, I'm not shocked, but I am angry about what happened today. And all Americans should be angry about what happened today. And all Americans should be angry about the whataboutism. And all Americans should be angry about the differences in the way Black Lives Matter protesters were treated, gassed in the Capitol because the president wanted to carry a Bible and do a public event for a show, to make a video. And then today, you have people who hopped up on lies and propaganda, took over the nation's capital, not stopped by police. Everyone is saying, what was the failure in police? What happened? There was no failure. If you look at the video, those people are being ushered in by some of the people who are
So
supposed
you
to be
don't think
security
it
or
was
police.
simply about not being prepared?
No, I don't think it was about not. How can you not be prepared when you are in control?
Come on, bro.
Of protecting.
He's black. He knows what's going on. What do you mean, dude? Like, of course. What do you mean? Dude, did we not go through fucking literally BLM protests this entire summer? We know what it looks like when they're fucking prepared, dude.
One has to think that these people are somehow believing what these folks are saying, or are at least some way have been co-opted by them or a part of it. Because these folks are going and saying, this is our capital. This belongs to us. They work for us. Therefore, they feel entitled to be able to subvert justice, to go into the nation's capital, to stand at podiums and lectures.
Sorry, I forgot. Cuomo was also a person of color.
Officials, presidents,
Italian
and
rights,
senators,
baby.
and congressmen of the United States.
Italian rights, baby.
We are supposed to respect the country. We're supposed to respect the Capitol. And by the way, you and I were talking about the fringe right media, and state-run media over at Fox News. I consider them because they have been on the fringe.
This is a Norman audience that we have today, but
talking about today,
I'm doing all my regular
gosh, I can't
memes.
believe how beautiful the cap. This became about the Capitol physically, the beauty of the Capitol being somehow desecrated. What about the democracy? What about the republic? And stop comparing it to Black Lives Matter protesters, because Black Lives Matter protesters were there for a real issue.
True.
Police brutality, criminal justice reform, the way people of color are treated in this country. People of color who did what those people did today at the Capitol, it would not have been, come on in, let's take a selfie, let me help you, escort you down the stairs. That would have been tear gas, get on the ground, knees on the neck. That's what the Black Lives Matter protesters were about. Yes, there were rioters who were out of control with Black Lives Matter. The same thing happened with today. So today, the folks who are at state-run media and who are saying, well, not all the people were out there for doing bad things. The majority of those people were protesters and they were peaceful. That is the same argument that Black Lives Matter had been making about people. Not all of them were Antifa.
However, and look, why is this important? Two reasons. One, because this was supposed to be a seminal moment today. This moment was so ugly, so obvious, that it should have been an end for us. It should have been.
You know it's fucking weird when he turns to the camera instead of facing Don Lemon.
Just another step in a process. And
you know what I mean?
We're gonna have to talk about. Is today going to be an end, or is it going to be a beginning of an ugly period? Now,
he's so handsome, though.
It delayed our democracy at a minimum, and that's why they went there. And that is a fundamental difference, all right? Any violence is not protest.
I'm joking. I know his last name is Lemon.
We say this all the time.
Okay.
The reason we have to keep saying it is because there are people in this society who want to weaponize differences. And they immediately came out today and mitigated the significance of what happened today. Oh, well, you were okay with it when it was BLM. Nobody was okay with it.
I hung out with Don Lemon once.
To suggest that showed that we were not past
at the White House Correspondents' Dinner Playboy party.
A delay. Because what we're doing right now, the reason we have a chance to recap here, and for Don to give his thoughts, is because right now, they've been delayed again. This is supposed to be the day where Congress certifies the electoral votes from all the different states, okay? It is not a forum for adjudication of claims. It's not a court. It's not a commission. It is not a fact-finding body.
That's what's happening.
It is about
so
certification.
dumb.
It is being bastardized for that use.
Why are you
by
modding
Republicans.
that, dude?
And in the form of legal geniuses. This Senator Hawley,
have the
Senator
dumbest
Cruz, they were
audience, I
Supreme
swear to
Court
God.
clerks. They know what they're talking about. Right now, they're in chamber getting
they
ready
don't,
to debate.
They don't know what they're talking about now. They don't. Well,
but hold on. I just want to give them the sense of where we are in the process.
Yeah,
they're going to be in chamber, and they're going to be debating up to 2 hours. The only other objection that we expect, there were going to be a number, as many as 6. After the insurrection today, some senators got cold feet and said, you know what, maybe this is a bad move, fomenting fraud that is a farce. But Hawley did not. Cruz did not. So now Pennsylvania is up for debate up to 2 hours. When they start debating it, the House and the Senate went to separate chambers to do their debate. We'll bring you the debates from the floor.
Yeah,
Please.
it may be 2 hours. And Josh Hawley is saying
They have up to 2 hours.
He's going to cede his time, so he's not going to speak, and he's going to allow it. So it could be short. It's going to allow many senators to leave the Capitol while the House debates, possibly for 2 hours, and then they're going to vote on this Pennsylvania objection. But again, this is where we are now. We're watching. We would not have what happened today not happen. We wouldn't be sitting here at 12:25 in the morning, probably.
Who, us?
With the vote. We would not be sitting here saying, well, Pennsylvania is being debated right now. That would have happened earlier.
Yes.
They lost time.
Would have been over.
Because of this. This would have been over.
Yeah.
All of this is pro forma, what's happening right now. All of this is theater with what's happening right now.
True.
And the reason, everyone says, get back to
I mean,
the
we
moment.
would be.
The reason that we're here in this moment is because of people like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, who have been lying to the American people and now trying to compare apples and oranges when it comes to protesters versus rioters in this country. That's the moment that we're in right now. It's all the same moment. We're all in the same moment. This is what happens when you ignore the will of the people, whether you're a Republican and you believe that this was falsely believed that this election was stolen, or whether you are a Democrat or someone who believes in criminal justice and you believe that people of color should be treated equally. This is where we are in this country right now, and it has all culminated in a moment that has come together, and now people are trying to say, people are wanting to take away a free and fair election, the right of the people.
That's what they were there to do today.
It
wasn't just
the
outrage.
same thing.
It wasn't an
Because-
overflowed protest.
Hang on,
They had a point.
Just give me some leeway here. Because of a president
Shut up, Chris.
who uses fear.
I know you think
and
you're
anger
POC.
as weapons, who pits people against each other. And the people who are in Congress, like Hawley and Cruz, are using it this moment right now to prop themselves up for political gain. That's why we're in this moment right now. So it all comes together. It's not just what's happening on the Senate floor. It's not just what's happening in Congress. It's what's happening in everyday people's lives in this country. That's where we are.
Absolutely. And many people, even in the media, good journalists, were saying this is surreal. This is unimaginable.
It's not.
We can't. This is reality. This is where we are in this country. I'm not saying everybody's this way, but this is the mood. This is our political culture. This is where we are. And by the way, there was bloodshed today. All right. 4 people died. Most notably, you're going to hear about a woman who was shot and killed during the insurrection when she had broken into the Capitol with others. It happened as they were literally rioting and trying to break down a door. There is dramatic video to show you of the moments leading up to that deadly confrontation. Why show that? Why not show it? None of us should take just an ounce or a scintilla of any type of satisfaction in hearing that somebody got hurt, even though they were doing something wrong. Our democracy should have never come to this. And you need to own.
You know, some of these games are fucking crazy. You really got fucking hospital gamers in the chat saying you could be playing Rust right now, today of all days. I mean, they're right.
Distressing for you.
Oh, is this the fucking crazy angle?
Oh, no, we're going to hold on it. Senator McConnell is saying something. Listen.
Res 1 and Section 17 of Title 3, the United States Code, when the 2 houses withdraw from the joint session to count the electoral vote for separate consideration of an objection, a senator may speak to the objection for 5 minutes, not more than once. Debate shall not exceed 2 hours, after which the chair will put the question, shall the objection be sustained? The clerk will report the objection made in the joint session.
Objection from Senator Hawley from Missouri and Representative Perry from Pennsylvania. We, a United States Senator and member of the House of Representatives, object to the counting of the electoral votes on the state of Pennsylvania on the ground that they were not, under all of the known circumstances, regularly given.
Dude, don't old people die if they stay up past a certain point? They're really risking their lives out here, dude. Josh Hawley is just trying to eliminate some of his fucking colleagues up in here.
If there's no further debate.
That was it?
If there's no further debate, the question shall be, shall the objection submitted by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry, the senator from Missouri, Mr. Hawley, be sustained? Is there a sufficient second? There is. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin. Ms. Baldwin, no. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Barrasso, no. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn, no. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Blunt, no. Mr. Booker.
No.
Mr. Booker, no.
Okay, dude, this is so stupid.
No. Mr. Braun. Mr. Braun, no. Mr. Brown.
This is literally like when I did my ride-along for my politics of criminal justice class and found out that like a big chunk of police work revolves around writing paperwork after you're done harassing random individuals on the streets. Like, this is literally when you find out how the sausage is made, and it's so boring. And that's why they're like literally 87 years old.
No. Mr. Casey. Mr. Casey.
Like most of this shit is just like pure procedure, insanely boring.
No. Mr. Coons.
And impossible to fucking keep up with unless you are literally 90 years old and basically decaying on that seat and you got nothing else going on.
No. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Cotton, no. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Kramer, no. Mr. Crapo. Crapo, no. Mr. Cruz.
One of the dumbest
Mr. Cruz.
last names in all of Congress.
Mr. Daines, no. Ms. Duckworth. Ms. Duckworth, no. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Durbin, no. Ms. Ernst.
No.
Ms. Ernst, no. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Feinstein, no. Mrs.
Speaking of
Fisher.
literal 97-year-olds.
Fisher, no.
Dianne Feinstein.
Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, no. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Grassley, no. Mr. Haggerty.
Oh, I wanted to watch this video.
Mr.
It's
Haggerty,
crazy.
No.
Don't worry, we're
Ms.
going to watch
Harris.
this shit.
Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Hawley, aye. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Heinrich, no. Mr. Hickenlooper. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Ms.
Thank you, I'm
Hirono.
Tiny Rick.
Mr. Hoven. Mr. Hoven.
Gotten a little bit more
no.
normal so I can call out gift
Mrs.
subs now at
Hyde-Smith.
least at 100K.
Mrs. Hyde-Smith, aye. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Inhofe, no. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, no. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, no. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, no. Mr. King. Mr. King, no. Ms. Klobuchar. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Mr. Langford.
At least it's not poop sock.
Mr. Langford,
At least
no.
it's like something
Mr.
fucking
Leahy.
fun and cute to look at. You know what I mean?
Mr. Leahy, no. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, no. Mrs. Leffler. Mrs. Leffler, no. Mr. Lujan.
Wow.
Mr. Lujan.
Thank you, P-Blows, for the 2021
no.
gift subs.
Ms. Lummis. Ms. Lummis, aye. Mr. Manchin. Mr. Manchin, no. Mr. Markey. Mr. Markey, no.
No. We're gonna watch this shit. This shit's crazy. It's actually
Mr. Marshall.
really crazy.
Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McConnell, no. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran, no. Ms. Murkowski. Ms. Murkowski, no. Mr. Murphy.
Bro, today was so fucking long. I forgot that an Illinois congressperson literally said Hitler was right when he said we must secure the youth. That's how long today's been, bro. We started off today, and at 10 a.m., there was some psychopath on a Moms for America podium literally saying, like, Hitler was right. Yeah, people are like, what? That's crazy. That is literally something that happened. Congressman-elect from Illinois literally said that. Said Hitler was right, dude. That's how today started.
Rubio. Mr. Rubio, no. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sass. Mr. Sass, no. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schatz, no. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Schumer, no. Mr. Scott of Florida. Mr. Scott of Florida, aye. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, no. Mrs. Shaheen. Mrs. Shaheen, no. Mr. Shelby. Mr. Shelby, no. Ms. Sinema. Ms. Sinema, no. Ms. Smith.
No, she said Hitler was right about one thing.
No.
Yeah.
Ms. Stabenow. Ms. Stabenow, no. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan.
Oh, today's also the new
no.
record.
Mr.
I
Chester.
forgot to mention that. The United States has set a new daily
Mr.
record for
Chester,
coronavirus cases
no.
and coronavirus deaths on
Mr.
Wednesday.
Thune. Mr. Thune, no. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tillis, no. Mr. Toomey. Mr.
Number one,
Toomey,
baby.
No. Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Tuberville, aye. Mr. Van Hollen.
Of course, Tuberville said
Mr.
aye.
Van Hollen, no. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, no. Ms. Warren. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wicker, no. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Wyden, no. Mr. Young. Mr. Young, no. Ms. Harris.
I love
Ms.
Mr.
Harris,
Whitehouse. Great name.
No. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Ms. Hirono. Ms. Hirono, no. Mr. Portman. Mr. Portman, no. Mr. Cassidy. Mr. Cassidy, no. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Menendez,
So dumb.
no.
Okay. Watch this shit. This is how they broke. Hey, this is how they broke in. "13 people arrested, by the way." Saturday night. Pog. These are the shittiest cops. I mean, hello, of course. All right.
So here we go. They're just waiting to announce right now, Chris.
So
They
what's
voted.
happening now is the parliamentarians, the people who sit in front of Mike Pence, if you're looking at the screen right now, you have two sets of dais, right? So you have the people who are on that top level. Those are the Senate parliamentarians, all right, those two rows. And they're pretty much the only ones who know the rules. So now they're finishing the vote, and then Mike Pence will record the vote. Now, what has been remarkable here so far...
They're still on Sanders. I'm hearing Sanders.
Yeah, they're still going through the roll call. Sanders is obviously Bernie Sanders. Is that they have more aye or yes votes on this than we anticipated. So far, we've heard 7. Now, you have to remember where we are with this, okay? This is not a place to adjudicate claims by law. It is to certify what states have already adjudicated. So we're going to listen to the vice president now read off the vote and then discuss the gravity of this moment.
On this vote, the yeas are 7, the nays are 92. The objection is not sustained. The Secretary will notify the House of the action of the Senate, informing that body that the Senate is now ready to proceed to joint session with further counting of the electoral vote for President and Vice President. Majority Leader.
Mr. President,
what will happen is
of all of our colleagues who don't expect additional
I would just want to hear what McConnell says.
So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that
It's
upon
so
the
funny
dissolution
that
of the
their
joint
live
session,
streaming setup is
the
like
Senate stand
mine.
adjourned to then convene
But they're
for
just
pro
in a
forma
studio.
sessions only, with no business being conducted on the following dates and times.
Basically, that's
and that
basically it's all
following
but
each
a
pro
done.
forma
Right, and it's so
session-
interesting in terms of why people get turned off by government. One little step sideways that just informs our culture.
Yeah.
We're going to come back tomorrow for pro forma sessions where no business is conducted.
Right.
Only in government do you have a meeting to do nothing. Now, what that means is they will not get your business done tonight. The vice president had said in kind of a strong statement of retaliation to the terrorism today. I mean, look, that's what it was. It's not just violence. It was politically directed. They wanted to undo this
Say it,
process.
don't fucking
It was an
spray it,
insurrection.
Cuomo.
They wanted to take over the Capitol. They wanted this not to happen. This is a unique level of animus for us. Now, what happened with this vote, 93-7, means that 7 senators, all Republicans, decided that even though this is not a tribunal for the adjudication of what happened in a state, they were going to say it was anyway. That even though the state of Pennsylvania that this was on has been adjudicated at so many levels, Senator Hawley from Missouri said something that he knows isn't true. And the man was a Supreme Court clerk.
Yeah. Well, you said that he and Ted Cruz know because they're apparently these.
They
people
are
know.
very
They're sophisticated
legal minds.
They're sophisticated in fooling their constituents and the American people that they are actually doing their business. That's not what they're doing. But I think it's important to call out everyone who voted yes on this. And as we call it, I wish we had a wall because we call it a wall of shame.
There's 7 of them.
Ted Cruz, Texas. Josh Hawley of Missouri, not even obviously none of Pennsylvania. Cindy Hyde-Smith of Mississippi. Cynthia Loomis of Wyoming. And then you have Roger Marshall of, Roger Marshall of Kansas. Roger Marshall of Kansas, Rick Scott of Florida, Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. Those are the yes. And here's the interesting thing. Kelly Loeffler, who just lost her bid as an incumbent senator last night, had said yesterday, on the day of voting, I am going to vote yes or no, right? Not to certify these things. She decided today, after what happened at the Capitol, that she was going to vote to certify. I'm not sure if she found religion. I'm not sure what her reasoning was, but it's interesting that she said...
Bro, it's because she was always a bored housewife who literally wanted a fucking seat for funsies.
As well. That doesn't mean he's absolved of any sin.
She's literally a billionaire, dude.
But he did
they have
say
to go
this
back
is
to
done.
New
It is
York
over.
Well, look,
and
again,
live with liberals and
there's
shit.
a lot going on in this moment, but it all leads us to the
Fuck
same
you
place,
mean, bro? She was
which
just
is
trying to
that
win a
we are
seat.
at a bottom here. I've never seen it this bad. And we often say we're living history. We often say a lot of things because we want you to be able to seize on the meaning of a moment. And when you kept being told that this president was saying things that was dangerous, I know it got monotonous and it started to seem hyperbolic. And then you had a group of people today, solely at his discretion and in his name, break in to the United States Capitol, overtake the session to count the electoral votes to decide who our next president and vice president is. Okay? That's not a protest turned into a riot. That's not beating up buildings. It's not criminality. All those things are wrong. but they are not this. And the immediate response by the Retrumplicans and by the supporters and the space around him was to mitigate it immediately. So our hope was, hopefully this is enough. And it seemed like it was, because the people in Congress were shook. You know, when people come in and they say, hey, they're coming to get you, you're going to be a little bit scared when you get back.
Didn't necessarily have to happen. Stand on what is happening right now. Don't go back to what happened this summer. Again, I think it's apples and oranges. Don't talk about the Black Lives Matter. Don't talk about the protests. We can all deal with that. Let's talk about what happened today. This is supposed to be the
I'll say it if they don't want to say it. Black Lives Matter protests that turned violent largely as a consequence of police altercations and largely a consequence of police escalations. But also, that was a legitimate protest. That was a legitimate grievance. And I do not care that it turned violent, because ultimately that cause was just. What is happening today, is not legitimate. It is a completely illegitimate protest. Don Lemon said as much earlier in the day, or earlier in the broadcast, but I don't think he doesn't have that kind of liberty to be able to fully say it. I mean, I don't give a fuck that the BLM protests had violent outcomes ultimately. He can't say that. They should have looted and vandalized and assaulted and murdered to become a legitimate protest. I mean, it's nuts. Like, the comparison is just ridiculous. Oh, is this where she got shot? Oh, okay.
All right, so you saw what we did there, right? We froze the video to save you the aftermath. I have to be honest with you. This is a discretion call editorially that we make to kind of insulate you from the reality of violence. I've always thought it was a mistake.
I think we should show it.
I think it's a mistake at war. I remember covering the Iraq War and being over there, and you guys lost interest. And you didn't want to see dead bodies anymore. And I think that when you get numb to it, you start to forget the significance. Yeah. It matters that she was taken out there today. It didn't have to happen. It should have never happened. None of this should be happening.
But we showed Ahmaud Arbery being shot on camera. We showed George Floyd losing his life on camera. Mm-hmm. We show a lot of people who were killed by police, mostly black people, black men, being killed on camera. We should show that woman being killed on camera.
Dude, Don Lemon is such a liberal, dude. The answer isn't fucking to have like white bodies who are dead be shown and plastered on camera. The answer is not showing black bodies in violence porn.
We should show that.
It's like such a fucking lib take to just be like, no, we should literally flip it and like show dead white people as well. No, the point is not to show dead black people. What the fuck?
Because we're not in a place where you're sensitive.
I mean, I also don't want them to show it because I'll get banned. But
that's how you can have people break into your Capitol today and immediately have it explained away by people. Now, let's get to somebody
it's such a lib take, dude, to just be like, we need equal representation in the murder porn category. Which, by the way, he's right. Like, Don Lemon is right. He's right about the grievance when he mentions the fact that like black people and brown people, like victims of crimes against humanity when it comes to immigrants and shit, like their bodies are shown very liberally. They will show dead bodies of black and brown people all the time. It's disgusting. I've talked about it during the George Floyd stuff. I stopped showing it at a certain point. I always thought that like it's important to show the gruesome imagery, to show the humanity being taken away from someone. Okay? I also personally thought it's important for like white people to see that reality. But I realized that I think it's not great. I think it's really gruesome. And it's this trauma porn that you're playing over and over again. And like people literally don't do that for white people. They just don't. And it ultimately ends up being more harmful in my opinion, which is why I stopped. You were such a dumb cuck. You're lying. The only reason you're not showing it is because you would get banned from Twitch. Stop being a hypocrite, you soy lord. No, when I was at the Young Turks and I had all liberty to show whatever the fuck I wanted to show, I used to do it and I stopped. What a fucking freak, dude. My man said soy lord. Yikes, dude. Yo, why don't you go storm Congress, brother? What the fuck are you doing here? You got lost on your way over to DC, dude? My man's in my chat typing soy lord instead of fucking hanging out with the rest of the hogs over in DC.
Some of my House colleagues that I've had
What is a
conversations
soy lord, dude?
explain that they were supporting this effort.
Yo, when a dude writes soy lord in the Twitch chat, you immediately out yourself as the kind of guy who wears like a Kekistan flag at the Trump rally. Oh! Like, you know that guy who was at the Trump rally yesterday? Not today. The one who was wearing like fucking full kitted out like Holy Crusade gear with like a Kekistani flag? That's what you sound like, dude. Nobody's impressed by your vernacular, brother. It sounds so cheesy and so lame.
Those members of Congress who have supported this specious attack on the Electoral College vote will have their names permanently written in ink, and everyone should know those names. I will never look at my colleagues who voted for these challenges, who supported these challenges, who fueled this insanity. I will never be able to look at them the same. And that includes some of my Michigan colleagues that I could not look in the eye today when we were huddled in a safe place. I could not look them in the eye with any degree of respect. I hope we remember those